The cost of renewable energy is higher than traditional fossil and nuclear power. In Germany, the government passed a law to force power companies to buy renewable energy at a higher price. The open policy means that ordinary citizens can make their own energy and sell it to the power companies. As we found out in the latest in our series of reports from Germany, even guest houses are getting in on the act.
Germany's convenient transportation system makes it a popular destination for backpackers who tend to stay in guest houses. Let's see how German guest houses compare to those in Taiwan.
But I just want to show you two systems. People usually realize when they go down to the cellars are very warm. This is loss, it's wasted heat. Here you realize the loss is much smaller, it's much cooler, the room is much cooler.
Insulated central heating pipes transfer heat energy from the basement, where it would otherwise go to waste, up to the guest house rooms.
You know, it's a small building, so we basically have only 2 small solar panels, but that's enough for us. In summer we're producing like 2 times as much as we need. And then the electricity we don't need, we give it into the governmental system. And we get money for this. And in winter we're producing 10 or 15 or 20%. And then we're using the money from the government to pay for the other electricity. So in average, over the whole year, it's 70 to 80%.
In winter, when solar power production cannot keep up with demand, you can buy electricity online, which is guaranteed renewable energy.
The cheapest is €693. You can even buy French if you like. A registered power company takes 1 cent per kilowatt hour for a fund for new renewable energy facilities.
The competitive market of variously priced green energy packages is being joined by power companies that used to rely on cheap fossil fuel. To stimulate the green economy, the German government's Renewable Energy Act forces power grid operators to buy clean energy at 4 to 5 times the market price for a guaranteed 20-year period. And that's not the only incentive.
Including the governmental support, we have a refinancing of 8 to 9% a year. So it's refinanced after around 11 to 12 years, which is very good for us.
If the solar panels last 20 years after the guest house gets its investment back, the next 10 years will be pure profit. Meanwhile, in Taiwan, Chen Yuqi's detached home is one of the few buildings on the crowded island that has space for solar panels. Unfortunately, it took a year to cut through the red tape to install the system.
There are at least 100 stamps. Every page had to be stamped and opened up and stamped again. I even had to stamp my little chop like this. The strict application process made you wonder if the government, and especially the central government, was really serious about cutting emissions.
14 solar panels and an investment of 600,000 NT dollars gives Ms. Chen 4,500 kilowatt hours a year. Taipower pays $11 per kilowatt hour, as well as a 50,000 NT dollar subsidy for 1 kilowatt. At that rate, Ms. Chen will see a return in 9 years.
When I do this, I thank the sun. Thank you for giving me warm weather. This way we can really cut carbon instead of just emitting carbon.
In South Taiwan, where fish farmers were encouraged to turn their pools into solar power plants, the Energy Bureau unexpectedly announced it would pay the purchase fee from the completion date instead of the start of the contract and cut the buying price from 11 to 7 NT dollars. The change was provoked by concerns that a high subsidy would affect the price of electricity.
When everyone heard, they got a shock. If the cost is $10 but goes up to $12 with tax, the producer doesn't care. He will sell to the consumer for $2 more. That will put the price up all over the country. So from politicians to businessmen, to one agreed apart from academics.
In contrast, in Germany, the subsidy is directly added to the price. Renewable power companies were first offered very generous incentives to encourage investment, but as solar energy production took off and production costs came down, the subsidies were gradually cut. This year, the cost of solar power should match its market price. In Germany, the public pick up the tab to subsidize renewable energy instead of the government digging into its reserves. Despite the pressure on inflation, the nation has successfully created a legal framework and advantageous market conditions to encourage investors and the public to get behind the scheme.
In Taiwan, the most common form of solar energy is this water heater. But our green energy policy still has a lot of red tape. In our next show, we'll go to Freiburg to see how a government program helped make it the solar energy capital of Europe.